Hello, good morning, welcome to Full Size Ford. Today we're going to be working on our 1961 Ford Galaxie Starliner. Just brought this car home a couple weeks ago, maybe a little longer than that, but we're going to be working on the brakes today. Before we actually try to get it running, we actually want to try to get it to stop. The previous owner had this car for about 5 years just sitting, and before that it was rescued from a field over in western Washington, so we have no idea what we're going to find out as far as rusted lines and corroded hoses, things like that. So this does have the four-wheel drum brakes, original fruit jar single pop master cylinder. So buckle up and let's dive in. So first thing we're going to do is just have a feel on the old brake pedal here and see what we got going. Doesn't move at all. Seems to be absolutely frozen, which means that the piston is probably frozen in the bore of that master cylinder. So I think that's probably where we're going to need to start. So I was actually able to push hard enough to get this thing to free up. There's just absolutely nothing there, of course, which was totally to be expected. So let's go ahead and take a gander under the hood and we'll start there. So there she is, the old fruit jar. First things first, we'll see if we can get that cap off of there, and it's an old metal cap, so very good chance that that thing's just absolutely rusted to the housing of the master cylinder. But that'll be step number one. So with a little coaxing from a giant Craftsman set of adjustable pliers, we were able to get that lid off, and as we expected, it is completely bone dry. So I think rather than even mess with this and putting fluid in it and trying to bleed them, I think just given by the number of years this car's been sitting, I'm just going to go ahead and put a new master cylinder on it. We'll start there and then we'll start working at the wheels. So what we have here is the venerable old Robustus MC32900, aka the fruit jar. It's kind of sad these are made in Taiwan now. I mean, Robustus is still known for decent quality stuff, but I know sometimes I just struggle with putting Taiwan-made parts on a 1961 Ford, but it's just a sign of the times, I guess. So here's our unit here. It's nicely wrapped in plastic. Comes with some fittings for bleeding. I'm not a big one as far as bleeding this before I put it on. I'll just fill it with some fluid, put it on. I typically use a pressure bleeder to hook to it to just to push all the air out of it. Seems to work well for me. I know some guys like to bench bleed, but again, with the pressure bleeder, I don't really find it necessary. Alright, so the first step in the operation is we've got a little clip on there on the brake pedal that we're going to pop off of there and be able to get that master cylinder rod off of the brake pedal. Then everything else will take place under the hood. Let's see, this is probably gonna want to turn this whole line. Usually the case on a car this old. Unhook our stoplight switch. Well, for a car from western Washington, this is already going better than expected. One thing you can tell from the factory, you see this right here. This car would have had factory air conditioning. This would have been punched out right here, and the hoses would have ran through there. One. And two. And there is our master cylinder. And then typically we're going to need to probably transfer the stoplight switch over and this little fitting over. Alright, so we've got some fluid in this. Swapped over the fitting, and the stoplight switch just basically takes a 1-inch inner wrench to swap that over. So now we're going to put this unit back in the car. Definitely going to be the shiniest part on this car. Make sure that boot goes through the firewall. Has a big bulbous boot on it. Doesn't seem to want to go through there. Get caught. Okay. I'm just going to take a look inside the car and make sure that going on the right side of the pedal. Even though it's made in Taiwan, I am kind of happy to see that it has a metal lid on the master cylinder. It looks a little bit more original. A lot of the later replacements I've gotten for these have had the plastic lid on them, and it just doesn't look right. Plastic isn't something you think of when you look at this car. Okay, so we got that back up to the firewall. Now we'll put our line back in. Which is the clip that holds this to the brake pedal itself was kind of rusted in there, and it came out in 2 pieces. So we're probably gonna have to go by the hardware store and get another clip for it. We don't want this too tight, but we don't want it to leak either. I'll hook our stoplight switch back up. That's extremely important because there's no taillights in the car. Alright, and there we go. Now the next step will be to start working at the wheels and seeing if it'll bleed and seeing what we have to do there. promising on this car is a lot of times the lower core supports on these look like Swiss cheese with rust, but this one actually looks pretty good. Alright, so now the next thing we'll do is get some jack stands to put underneath the frame, because we want to support it. Safety first. That's good. Alright, so since we couldn't get any fluid, bleeder was frozen on this wheel cylinder here. As you can see here, this is, I've already got this side partially taken apart. You can see this is, nothing was going to happen there. That's just bad. This is a car that's been sitting for a long time, so what we're going to do is we're going to put some new shoes, hoses on there. I took the drums to work, machined them, put new seals in them, repacked the bearings. Bearings actually look good. We're going to replace these hoses because I think these hoses are shot. So we could have spent a month of Sundays trying to bleed this thing, and we weren't going to get anywhere. So one thing I was really afraid of was these lines right here being frozen and not being able to get those off and having to replace the hard steel lines or try to reflare these on the car. Luckily this one broke free. The other side is a little rougher, but I think it's going to break free as well. So that really helped us out. So these wheel cylinders on these 64 and older Fords, it can be a little tricky. This is basically what it's retained by this big 1.25 inch nut right here, and they've been sitting for a while. They can be a little rough to break loose. I tried a long ratchet with even a little cheater bar on it, but it couldn't really get right angle and good enough leverage. But I got to tell you, the old 1/2 inch Drive Milwaukee, she did the job. Got her busted loose. So now we can go ahead and take this apart, change this wheel cylinder out, and hopefully be able to get some brakes on this thing. Alright, so one thing to note on these is you do have to pull the hose. You gotta pull the brake hose off before you can pull the cylinder off of there. It will not come through with the hose. It's basically just a 5/8 inner inch to break that loose, back it off, and once it's out, then the wheel cylinder will simply just slide off once the nut is removed. So now, just the process of cleaning up this backing plate, and then we'll be able to reassemble in reverse order, as if it were only that easy. Alright, so I've got the wheel cylinder installed. If you look, I just put a little bit of brake lubricant on the contact points. You'll want to do that, and then just took the ends of those pistons where they go into the wheel cylinder and just sanded them off some emery cloth. Installed them, so now I'm ready to reinstall the shoes, springs, and proceed to the next step. Alright, so now you can see the completed product on the, this is the passenger front, which shows the correct, earlier I think I had 2 springs on the back, 1 on the front, because that's the way it was set up, but that's actually incorrect. Why they used double springs on both sides, I don't know. These early Fords are some of the only cars I've ever seen like that. Of course, we had some teeth missing off the old self-adjuster wheel. I don't know if you can see it very well in the picture, but that one's pretty chewed up. It's probably frozen at one point, and somebody tried to probably free it up. It's free now, but I didn't like the fact that the teeth were all chewed up, so we went ahead and put new self-adjuster kits in. They're relatively inexpensive for these cars. To get the double springs, nobody lists a hardware kit for these cars. I gave the O'Reilly's part number earlier. This is a Rebestus H7071. So basically all you need to do on these cars is just get 2 of these kits, and that'll give you the extra brake springs, the hold down springs that you need, because the rest of it's the same. I'll have some extra return springs that I could use possibly on a later jalopy that I need to patch up, but again, these kits are relatively inexpensive. The unfortunate side is they're made in China, but that's where we're at these days. But it works. It's all refurbished. We remachined the drums, packed the wheel bearings, and hopefully by this afternoon the brake system will be completely operative on this car. All right, so as you can see, we've got the new hard line in here to replace that one that was rusted, broke off. Got the new hose installed, got the new wheel cylinder installed. You can see the wheel cylinder on this side was probably not much going to happen there. She was junk. So basically now all we need to do is reassemble these brakes on this side and then dive into the rear. Alright, let's see what we got in here. Oh boy, we got parts falling out. There's part of our self-adjuster. We got springs that are rusted and snapped off. More of the self-adjuster here. So we were hoping we'd get away with rear brakes that might be able to be salvaged, but that is not going to be the case. Let's take a look inside the wheel cylinder cup here. When you see like dirt just pouring out of it like that, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to reuse that cylinder. So now we're going to be back to the parts catalog, see what we can conjure up for this thing, and start working on getting the rear brakes replaced. Just a few days till Portland. Here we go. Alright, so the driver's side did not produce good results. Let's see what we got on the passenger side. I already loosened this up with some penetrating oil around here, and yeah, we've got zero lining on the shoes. We've got broken or disconnected brake springs that are probably rusted beyond use anyway. And yeah, absolutely no linings on the shoes. Wheel cylinders full of dirt and sediment, usual. So yeah, round two. All right, so as you can see here, we get the rear all stripped down. The wheel cylinder, the tubing nuts here on the wheel cylinders are actually frozen. Could not get those to break free. So what we did was we got it to break free from the wheel cylinder. So what I do is I pull the line slightly through and then actually thread the cylinder off of it, and probably should replace the lines, but I just don't have time at this point, so we're going to use this this method and hope it ends up okay. Alright, so you can see we got the wheel cylinder installed. So instead of threading the cylinder back onto my line, like I was talking about earlier, I took one of those little propane torches and I just heated up the ends of these lines until expanded enough until I could get those tubing nuts to turn on the line. So now I can reinstall the wheel cylinder in the conventional manner. So it's bolted back up. The line's already hooked it back up. We're going to lube our contact points and then reassemble this rear brake. So there we have the completed project on the driver's side rear. You can see all the springs are in place. Got two hold down springs on each side. You see your thing always to remember is that your primary shoe, which is your shorter shoe, always goes on the front. Secondary shoe, which is your bigger shoe, always goes to the rear of the vehicle. Basically, this is what's called as a dual servo system. So basically, the spinning motion of the drum when the brakes are applied actually twists this, and actually this is why this shoe is bigger, because most of the braking is done on that rear shoe, being that twisting motion being forced into the drum. So again, always make sure you get that bigger shoe on the back side towards the rear of the vehicle. Same goes for front or rear. One thing nice about these older Fords is and again, I had to use multiple hardware kits because the H7071 from Raybestos common kit comes with everything you need except for you missing one set of these. You can probably actually source another set of the hold down pins individually. What I did is, they're so inexpensive, I just bought two of the H7071 kits, robbed a couple more of these hold downs out of them. That ends up solving that problem. And then I have a few extra hold down springs in case I should ever need one in the future. Probably won't. Probably just go into a giant bin of parts, never to be seen again in my shop. But again, there's the lowdown on the rear brakes. Now just to assemble the other side. Alright, so we got the brakes all together now in the car. Now it's time to start the bleeding process. With the single fruit jar master cylinder, you're going to want to make sure that that you check that periodically to make sure it stays full so we don't introduce air into the system. Kale is going to pump the brakes here for me while we bleed these wheels out and get any air out of the system, and we should have a good firm pedal when we're done. So here we are at the Portland swap meet. She's ready. She's not running yet, but we're going to kind of tinker on it over the weekend, see if we can get it started. Brakes are all finished. Went new all the way around. Wheel cylinders, shoes, hardware. Looks like it's going to be a nice weekend here in Portland, Oregon. And just hoping for a successful sale.